Hi, Recaps here. Today I'm going to explain a science fiction horror film called Prometheus. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. A spacecraft of advanced humanoid alien race have arrived on Earth. One of the aliens draws close to a waterfall and consumes a dark liquid, causing its body to disintegrate and fall off into a nearby waterfall. The alien's DNA breaks down and recombines, seeding the planet with the building blocks of life. In the year 2089, on the Isle of Skye, an archaeologist couple, Elizabeth and her boyfriend Charlie, discover a star map on a cave which is 35,000 years old. They both examine the map and believe that it's an indication that someone wants them to come and find them. Peter, the CEO of the Wayland Corporation, funds and helps the creation of the scientific deep space research vessel called the USS Prometheus to follow the map they found to the distant moon of LV-223. The ship's crew travels in hibernation at light speed, while the android David stays awake throughout the journey to monitor their entire trip. In 2093, the ship arrives in orbit around LV-223. And Meredith, the mission executive, orders David to wake everyone up. After being awoken from hibernation, the crew is informed of their mission: to find the ancient aliens called engineers, who they likely believe to be the creator of the human race. They also see the holographic message from Peter himself, who tells them about his funding of the mission and informs everyone that Charlie and Elizabeth are in charge of the mission. He also tells everyone that he would be dead by the time they see this message. As he disappears, Elizabeth and Charlie continue the presentation and show other crew members the images of old civilizations of ancient men appearing to worship giant beings that are pointing to the stars. Moments later, Prometheus enters the atmosphere of the planet, encountering turbulence that disappears when they break through the cloud cover and can see the surface. The Prometheus lands near an alien structure resembling a temple-like pyramid, and a team including Elizabeth, Charlie, and David leave the ship in protective suits to explore it, while Meredith and Captain Yannick remain aboard the ship and monitor their progress through cameras on their helmets. Meredith orders them to avoid any kind of direct contact and to return back immediately if aliens are found. Inside the pyramid, David removes his helmet. Charlie does the same as he discovers a pocket of breathable air. Seeing no danger in the atmosphere, everyone follows. David starts inspecting some carvings on the wall, and as he runs his fingers across them, the symbols light up and suddenly activate a holographic large alien figure that runs towards them. They watch the figure fall on the entrance of a big hall, and as the crew inspects the area, they find the remains of the alien killed by a closing door, which they assume to be 2,000 years old. In a damp chamber which David unlocks, they find hundreds of cylinder-like artifacts, a monolithic statue of a humanoid head, and the decapitated corpse of a giant alien believed to be one of the engineers. As they return back to the ship, David secretly takes a cylinder, while the remaining cylinders in the chamber begin to leak a dark fluid. Yannick notices a storm coming from a far distance and warns the team to return immediately. The approaching storm forces the crew to return to Prometheus, leaving crew members Milburn and Fifield stranded in the pyramid structure. Yannick informs them on the radio that they will be rescued in the morning. Elizabeth insists that they take the engineer's head back to the ship with them, and when they're returning back to the ship, Elizabeth accidentally drops the alien head. As she runs back to collect it, the storm surrounds her, and she nearly gets blown away by the storm. Charlie comes to help her, and they barely make it back alive. In the ship, Alien and Medic Ford start observing the alien's head. When they find the alien is wearing a helmet, David steps forward and helps them remove it for further examination. After removing the helmet, they see a face and head almost similar to humans. They decide to resurrect the head by inserting a device and making it think that it's still alive. It suddenly starts reacting, but exposure to the breathable atmosphere causes the severed engineer's head to decompose rapidly and blow up. Moments later, David is standing near a pod speaking to someone. When he comes back, Meredith asks him what they were saying. David is reluctant to tell her at first, but later he's forced to tell her that they were saying to try harder. From the data collected, Elizabeth and Ford discover that aliens' DNA is identical to that of the human race. Meanwhile, David in his chamber investigates the cylinder and discovers several ampules containing a sticky black fluid. Later, David meets Charlie and intentionally infects Charlie with the substance he found within the ampule, hiding it in a drop of liquid on his fingers and dipping it into a glass of champagne. Charlie drinks to celebrate their discovery. After some time, he looks in the mirror and notices his eyes are changing, seeing a small, silver worm-like organism emerging from one of his corneas. Now, Fifield and Milbourne are wandering about in the cave and discover a pile of alien bodies. Yannick detects a life form near Fifield and Milbourne, but it soon vanishes from the map. They go back to the hall and see a strange, snake-like creature emerging from a pool of black fluid that is leaked from the cylinders. As Milbourne tries to examine the creature, it quickly grabs his hand and wraps itself around his arm, breaking it in a matter of seconds. Fifield cuts the creature with a knife, but a corrosive fluid from one of the creatures melts Fifield's helmet, exposing him to the dark liquid leaking from the cylinders. The creature then works its way into Milbourne's helmet and forces itself down his throat. The next morning, after the storm subsides, the rest of the crew returns to the pyramid structure and finds Milbourne's corpse. At the same time, David discovers a room in the pyramid and is transmitting it to the ship via a camera for Meredith. David switches off the camera and sits on a chair right in front of the control panel. Suddenly, a holographic star map highlighting several distinct planetary systems appears. He watches as a hologram of the aliens activate a navigational system, and one of the planets that eventually appears is Earth. David then finds an engineer in a nearby pod and hears its heart beating. Now, Charlie's infection spreads rapidly in his body, and he's rushed back to the ship. As he visibly gets worse, Meredith refuses to let him aboard, considering the safety of others. Charlie approaches Meredith and begs her to kill him. She then burns him to death with a flamethrower. Witnessing this, Elizabeth is devastated. David discovers that after a medical scan, Elizabeth, despite being sterile, is pregnant. But David, not wanting her to see it, decides to put her back to sleep. But Elizabeth escapes and uses an automated medical surgery pod in Meredith's quarters to extract a horrific cephalopod-like creature from her abdomen while she's still conscious. At this point, it's revealed that Peter is not dead and is found to be in stasis aboard the ship. It's also revealed that Meredith is his daughter. Wayland explains it to Elizabeth that he wants to ask the engineers for help to avoid his death. Meanwhile, resurrected Fifield is discovered just outside the hangar, attacking them and killing several crew members before being killed by Yannick. He theorizes that the planet they're on was used by the engineers as a military base until they lost control of their biological weapons, which are the cylinders and black fluid they contain. The remaining crew with Peter return to the pyramid to try to awaken the living engineer in the pod. From the data Yannick receives, he finds out that the crew is actually standing on a spaceship. Inside the spaceship, David uses the controls and brings the engineer back from sleep. David then speaks an alien language to the engineer, asking him why they made mankind, and asking him to extend the life of dying Peter. The engineer responds by ripping David's head out and killing Wayland and Ford. Elizabeth escapes from the alien ship as it's activated by the engineer. The still active David tells everyone that the engineer is going to release the ampules of black fluid on Earth, thus killing every living creature on the planet. Meredith orders Yannick to return to Earth, but Elizabeth convinces him to stop the alien ship. Yannick and his two surviving crewmen take off and crash their ship, the Prometheus, into the alien ship, while Meredith flees in an escape pod. The disabled alien ship crashes back onto the planet, falls onto Meredith, and kills her. Elizabeth barely escapes from the crash and goes into the escape pod to retrieve supplies, and finds that her aborted but still alive alien offspring has grown to gigantic size. Unfortunately, not just Elizabeth, the engineer also survives the crash and enters the escape pod, attacking Elizabeth. She releases the tentacled creature and it overpowers the engineer and thrusts an ovipositor down its throat. After killing the engineer, David contacts Elizabeth, telling her that there are more alien ships elsewhere on the planet. She recovers David's android head from the alien ship, and together they travel to another alien ship to activate it and fly away. After they leave, a roaring new creature bursts out of the dead alien in a pod.